the Shadow of the Silent Majorities, or The End of the Social, an essay by Jean Baudrillard, read by Steadyy ΔΕlτα. Translator's note. Throughout the text, lamas, thermas, imply a condensation of terms, which allows Baudrillard to make a number of central puns and allusions. For not only does lamas directly refer to the physical and philosophical sense of substance or matter, it can just as easily mean the majority, as in the mass of workers, or even the electrical usage of an earth. Hence, thermas can simultaneously mean to form a mass, to form an earth, or to form a majority. Part 1. The whole chaotic constellation of the social revolves around that spongy referent, that opaque but equally translucent reality, that nothingness, the masses. A statistical crystal ball, the masses are swirling with currents and flows, in the image of matter and the natural elements. So at least they are represented to us. They can be mesmerized. The social envelops them like static electricity. But most of the time, precisely, they form an earth. That is, they absorb all the electricity of the social and political and neutralize it forever. They are neither good conductors of the political, nor good conductors of the social, nor good conductors of meaning in general. Everything flows through them. Everything magnetizes them, but diffuses throughout them without leaving a trace, and ultimately the appeal to the masses has always gone unanswered. They do not radiate. On the contrary, they absorb all radiation from the outlying constellations of state, history, culture, meaning. They are inertia, the strength of inertia, the strength of the neutral. In this sense, the mass is characteristic of our modernity, as a highly implosive phenomenon, irreducible for any traditional theory and practice, or even perhaps for any theory and practice at all. According to their imaginary representation, the masses drift somewhere between passivity and wild spontaneity, but always as a potential energy, a reservoir of the social and of social energy. Today a mute referent, tomorrow, when they speak up and cease to be the silent majority, a protagonist of history. Now, in fact, the masses have no history to write, neither past nor future. They have no virtual energies to release, nor any desire to fulfill. Their strength is actual, in the present, and sufficient unto itself. It consists in their silence, in their capacity to absorb and neutralize, already superior to any power acting upon them. It is a specific inertial strength whose effectivity differs from that of all those schemas of production, radiation, and expansion, according to which our imaginary functions, even in its wish to destroy those same schemas, an unacceptable and unintelligible future of implosion. Is this still a process? Stumbling block to all our systems of meaning, against which they summon all their resistance and screening, with a renewed outbreak of signification, with a blaze of signifiers, the central collapse of meaning. The social void is scattered with interstitial objects and crystalline clusters which spin around and coalesce in a cerebral chiaroscuro. So is the mass, an in vacuo aggregation of individual particles, refuse of the social and of media impulses, an opaque nebula whose growing density absorbs all the surrounding energy and light rays to collapse finally under its own weight, a black hole which engulfs the social. This is, therefore, exactly the reverse of a sociological understanding. Sociology can only depict the expansion of the social and its vicissitudes. It survives only on the positive and definitive hypothesis of the social. The reabsorption, the implosion of the social escapes it. the hypothesis of the death of the social is also that of its own death. The term mass is not a concept. It is a leitmotif of political demagogy, a soft, sticky, lumpen analytical notion. A good sociology would attempt to surpass it with more subtle categories, socio-professional ones, categories of class, cultural status, etc. Wrong. It is by prowling around these soft and acritical notions like mana once was that one can go further than intelligent critical sociology. Besides, it will be noticed retrospectively that the concepts class, social relations, power, status, institution, and social itself, all those too explicit concepts which are the glory of the legitimate sciences, have also only ever been muddled notions themselves, but notions upon which agreement has nevertheless been reached for mysterious ends, those of preserving a certain code of analysis. To want to specify the term mass is a mistake. It is to provide meaning for that which has none. One says the mass of workers, but the mass is never that of the workers, nor of any other social subject or object. The peasant masses of old were not in fact masses. Only those form a mass who are freed from their symbolic bondage, released only to be caught in infinite networks, and destined to be no more than the innumerable endpoints of precisely those same theoretical models which do not succeed in integrating them and which finally only produce them as statistical refuse. The mass is without attribute, predicate, quality, reference. This is its definition, or its radical lack of definition. It has no sociological reality. It has nothing to do with any real population, body, or specific social aggregate. Any attempt to qualify it only seeks to transfer it back to sociology and rescue it from this indistinctness, which is not even that of equivalence, the unlimited sum of equivalent individuals, 1 + 1 + 1, such is the sociological definition, but that of the neutral, that is to say, neither one nor the other, ne uter. There is no longer any polarity between the one and the other in the mass. This is what causes that vacuum and inwardly collapsing effect in all those systems which survive on the separation and distinction of poles, two or many in more complex systems. This is what makes the circulation of meaning within the mass impossible. It is instantaneously dispersed, like atoms in a void. This is also what makes it impossible for the mass to be alienated, since neither the one nor the other exist there any longer. A speechless mass for every hollow spokesman without a past, admirable conjunction between those who have nothing to say and the masses who do not speak. Ominous emptiness of all discourse, no hysteria or potential fascism, but simulation, by precipitation of every lost referential. Black box of every referential, of every uncaptured meaning, of impossible history, of untraceable systems of representation. The mass is what remains when the social has been completely removed. Regarding the impossibility of making meaning circulate among the masses, the best example is God. The masses have hardly retained anything but the image of Him, never the idea. They have never been affected by the idea of God, which has remained a matter for the clergy, nor by anguish over sin and personal salvation. What they have retained is the enchantment of saints and martyrs, the last judgment, the dance of death, sorcery, the ceremony and spectacle of the church, the immanence of ritual, the contrast to the transcendence of the idea. They were and have remained pagans, in their way, never haunted by the supreme authority, but surviving on the small change of images, superstition and the devil. Degraded practices with regard to the spiritual wager of faith, indeed. It is their particular way, through the banality of rituals and profane simulacra of refusing the categorical imperative of morality and faith, the sublime imperative of meaning, which they have always rejected. It isn't that they have not been able to attain the higher enlightenment of religion. They have ignored it. They don't refuse to die for a faith, for a cause, for an idol. What they refuse is transcendence, the uncertainty, the difference, the waiting, the asceticism which constitute the sublime exaction of religion. For the masses, the kingdom of God has always been already here on earth, in the pagan immanence of images, and the spectacle of it presented by the Church. Fantastic distortion of the religious principle. The masses have absorbed religion by their sorcerous and spectacular manner of practicing it. All the great schemas of reason have suffered the same fate. They have only traced their trajectory. They have only followed the thread of their history along the thin edge of the social stratum bearing meaning, and in particular of the stratum bearing social meaning. And on the whole, they have penetrated into the masses at the cost of their misappropriation, of their radical distortion. So it was with historical reason, political reason, cultural reason, revolutionary reason. So even with the very reason of the social, the most interesting, since this seems inherent to the masses and appears to have produced them throughout its evolution. Are the masses the mirror of the social? No. They don't reflect the social, nor are they reflected in the social. It is the mirror of the social which shatters to pieces on them. Even this image is not right, since it still evokes the idea of a hard substance, of an opaque resistance. Rather, the masses function as a gigantic black hole which inexorably reflects, bends, and distorts all energy and light radiation approaching it, an implosive sphere in which the curvature of spaces accelerates, in which all dimensions curve back on themselves and involve to the point of annihilation, leaving in their stead only a sphere of potential engulfment.